Hello, everyone, and welcome to MoveAmerica's webinar, Unlocking Growth Through Consortium Partnerships. I'm Rick, the guy with the super long last name that doesn't sound like it's spelled and isn't spelled like it sounds. I am the Strategic Communications Director here at MoveAmerica, and it is my absolute pleasure to be your host / ringmaster for the next hour. Now, today's topic is all about how consortium partnerships can help your organization compete for bigger contracts, reduce risk, and accelerate growth. Basically, we're trying to teach you how to level up your business from a solo player to part of a high-powered co-op team. Think of all those war games that people play on video games. You really want as many pieces of ammunition and as many people helping you as you can if you're going to fight those zombies. Not that we're calling any government contracts zombies. Now, gotta say, when you're talking about an all-star team, I've got an all-star lineup that is joining me today. So I'm going to give a chance for them to introduce themselves after I introduce who they are. First up, we're going to go with Vic Chambers. Vic is our Director of Technology Integration and Commercialization. This is a man who knows how to turn good ideas into funded projects. So Vic, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Good afternoon. Rick mentioned, my name is Victor Chambers. For MoveAmerica, what I do is I'm really focused in on technology development, how we can move great ideas, innovations into reality, into things that the government can really use. I serve also as managing director for our mentor protege program intermediary, which, if you're not familiar with mentor protege program, it pairs an experienced DoD contractor with a less experienced contractor to help guide them through lessons learned and more successful. My background is I'm a retired Air Force officer, spent my career doing advanced development of weapon systems, as well as also working after I retired, also in the DHS as well as the Intel community. So I've seen a wide array of different technologies, has been involved in a lot of cutting edge activities and trying to get those systems matured to the where they're actually deployed, and we are employing them to make us the most lethal force in the world.
Thank you, Vic. Appreciate that. Next up, we've got Marco Moses. Now, Marco is our financial management lead. Basically, he's like the Tony Stark of spreadsheets. Okay, so Marco, your turn to tell everyone about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marco Moses, and like Rick said, I'm the financial management lead here at MoveAmerica. And in that role, I'm responsible for the financial stability of MoveAmerica. So that includes all the financial management for our internal and external clients. And we also manage internal purchasing for the organization. So all procurement for internal operations are done and managed by myself and my team. I have over 20 years of federal, nonprofit, and private experience in federal procurement and financial management. And I'm happy to be here with you today and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Marco. Next up on our panel, we've got Ahmad Khan. He's our senior strategic advisor, basically our resident strategist who sees the game 3 moves ahead like any great chess player should. We like to call him AKs. AK, take it away.
Recently held a few senior leadership roles at DoD. Most recently, I was a non-career FPS at DoD CIO, where I was their director of strategic engagement. Prior to that, I was the chief of staff for the undersecretary for acquisition and sustainment. And earlier in my career, I spent several years in the private sector, most recently at the vice president of a company called Gabini. And prior to that, I had the opportunity to be part of a startup that went from 5 to 300 folks. And I was the head of their defense portfolio and oversaw program and technical delivery. So have pretty familiar with the government side of things and the private sector as well.
Fantastic. Well, we are thrilled to have you, and we're going to jump ahead to Kenyatta Wesley. He's our senior acquisition strategist. Look, he's the one who actually reads all the government contracting language that the rest of us just skim over. Kenyatta, this is your time, your 65 seconds of fame to tell everyone about yourself. So no pressure, but please go right ahead.
I'm gonna do it less than that. My role here is a strategic advisor. I give advice to Mr. Wyatt, our executive director, and the senior board for Move America on market expansion, market capabilities, as well as different acquisition strategies, specializing in consortium management. I also am now the lead for our entrepreneurial services division. I come with almost 30 years of experience on the federal side, including a former senior executive within the Department of Defense in multiple locations, as well as Health and Human Services. Thank you.
As you can see, folks, I am surrounded by geniuses, and I promise I'm going to do my best to try to keep up. What I want to do now is I want to start with the fundamentals, because everybody has probably heard the word consortium tossed around the industry. It sounds fancy, maybe even a little mysterious. It's kind of something out of a spy movie. But in reality, I have to say, it's one of the most practical, powerful business tools you can use. Vic, we're going to ask you to kick us off and let us know, what is a consortium just in plain English, and how is it different from just teaming up with another company on a project?
I think that the general idea behind that consortium is you bring together companies, not just companies, but organizations that have some kind of common understanding about what it is they do or what their objectives are. They're going to come together in some kind of structure and then work together. And you get some synergies from that. You get companies that are more experienced, so you get this diverse base that are helping less experienced companies. You get a diversity of capabilities, unique capabilities. And by working together, you create this community of practice that is somehow a better organization for everyone involved. So each member gets something out of that experience.
Fantastic. Marco, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, just to kind of sum up what Vic said. So basically, in plain English, a consortium is a structured network of organizations that come together from across different sectors, such as federal government, private industry, academia, and nonprofit, and they come together to accomplish a common goal or mission. And in doing so, as Vic said, they pool resources, whether those resources are financial resources, expertise, or equipment to achieve that common goal. And the purpose of forming a consortium is typically a lot more efficient to achieve a goal that would normally or typically be considered difficult for a single organization to accomplish on their own. Now, with that, there's a lot of misconceptions that comes with consortiums. A lot of individuals, when they hear consortiums, they think that it's a single legal entity, which we just explained that their consortium doesn't consist of a single entity, but it's more so an agreement between a network of organizations that share responsibilities, that have outlined responsibilities, that share resources, and also share in profits as well in some occasions. Some other misconceptions that may be going around about consortiums is that they're only good in academia and research, but that's a huge misconception, because consortiums are used in many fields such as federal procurement, technology development, transportation, healthcare, and small business incubators, believe it or not. Just some other misconceptions is that consortiums are permanent organizations. So once a consortium, some people believe that once consortiums are assembled, that they are indefinite. However, that's not true. Most consortiums are project-based and time-limited and are dissolved once their objectives are met.
Again, Marco and Vic, thanks so much for doing that. Basically, you know, we got to realize, instead of two companies dating, a consortium is really like a whole community building together, and you have to really like that. So, Vic, we're going to come back to you. You've worked with some companies who've had mixed ideas about what consortia are, right? So let's go ahead and ask you, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've run into?
You know, I think one of the biggest misconceptions and one of the things that keeps companies from joining a particular consortium is whether or not they think that they're really going to get anything out of it. And who's really gonna benefit? How do you benefit from it, right? Like if you're not connected to those who are running it, then you won't really see that benefit. But I think that's a big misconception, because what consortiums are really are about establishing that kind of community of practice that I talked about, in which you're networking not just for opportunities, but you're also networking for knowledge. Um, when you have this diverse group of companies, organizations, they have a diverse set of experiences that they've been through. And so as you move into some of those areas, you can find companies contact that may have that experience, and as well as some other client or connection to that, or you can find some people that may be doing some of the same things you are. So I think there's a lot of ways. The bottom line is there's a lot of ways companies can benefit by connecting through these consortiums, and there's a lot of opportunities out there that are not driven by that organization as well. But I also believe that the organizations themselves to then provide services to their community, right? They can't thrive unless they do that. So that gives each member a reason for being a part of that organization, that consortium.
Fantastic. And then Kenyatta, I know you've got something to say on this.
Yeah, first off, I agree 100% with Victor. One of the things I would just want to point out here is, as far as a potential misconception that I've heard over the years, is that there's a loss of autonomy or sometimes too much management complexity. And if you are with an organized, reputable consortium firm, then what happens is the members tend to agree on a common goal, mission, and strategy. Listen to that again: common goal, mission, and strategy. That takes away from the misconceptions or misunderstandings on what the consortium is for. It can reduce your burdens and in fact have the opposite effect and increase independence, because you now have an understanding of the values, the value stream within each consortium, and that your partners all agree with. And the decision making, it's not often not slowed down. It's the opposite, like where it actually speeds up, because they have a bunch of defined processes, streamlined, and each person has a specific set of roles, responsibilities, and authorities that are laid out. So it doesn't become this overwhelming, cumbersome thing. It becomes a very streamlined and efficient model or process. Over.
Fantastic. So remember, folks, a consortium, not just a secret club where only the cool kids get the good contracts. It's really much more than that. For the manufacturers and contractors that are tuning in today, what types of projects or opportunities typically require a consortium approach rather than just going it alone?
Sure. Projects that are best fit for consortiums are large-scale, complex, multifaceted initiatives where a diverse range of performers, where a diverse range of capabilities need to be performed, and pooling resources and managing risk among many entities makes sense. What I would say is a good litmus test is if the work is relatively known or standard and a few performers can work, then maybe a consortium isn't an ideal approach. Consortiums are ideal for, thriving for advancing critical priorities and solving big problems with a lot of unknowns. When I was recently at the government side of the house, I worked with a lot of consortiums focused on urgent national priorities, such as COVID-19 and Ukraine security assistance. These were big problems, very complex, with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of unknowns. Another area was definitely the emerging and technology space, the emerging and innovative technology space. Hypersonics is a good example, but when I was a DoD CIO, we used a consortium approach for a lot of cybersecurity efforts. Zero trust is a good example. Anyone familiar with zero trust knows it's not one capability. It's not multi-factor authentication. It's literally a plethora of cybersecurity and other capabilities. No one company can provide a comprehensive zero trust solution for the department. So those are the efforts that really were a consortium's ideal, where you need that diverse range of performers.
Terrific. So remember, folks, if you're a company that's ever said we could do that project if we only had more hands, more budget, more access, that's where you might consider a consortium, because we're basically saying it could be a fast pass, kind of like get at Disney World. Now that we've decoded the term, we want to talk about why it matters, because understanding the concept is great, but as business leaders, we know you all want to know, how is this going to help the bottom line? So AK, we're going to go back to you, because I think scale is the magic word here. Can you maybe share a story where a project was out of reach for a single company but became possible through a consortium?
Sure. When I was in the private sector, we worked with a few consortiums that were focused on the emerging and innovative technologies. And like most companies, we have our core capabilities, products and services that we performed very well on and had good past performance. But there were some technology gaps. For example, there was an Intel community client that wanted some specific advanced machine learning that we just didn't do. And consortiums were able to leverage a consortium to address that gap. And another example is there were areas where we had past performance, but it may not have been economically feasible, or it didn't align with our growth strategy to do that type of work. An example was we developed a lot of portals and platforms, but it didn't always make sense to do the help desk and other ancillary services that went along with them. So we leveraged, for opportunities, we often leverage consortium to help us supplement that. So they're a great resource for helping companies implement gaps, whether you don't have it or it just really doesn't make sense for you.
No, that's fantastic. And again, really great information and examples, because it's amazing to know that collaboration literally expands the playing field, because you just don't normally see that all the time. Vic, we're going to roll back to you for a sec. One of the biggest concerns I hear, especially from manufacturers, because we deal with a lot of manufacturers here at MoveAmerica, through MPP, through our work with DoD, OSBP, the one thing we hear about is risk, right? Nobody likes rolling the dice with a huge contract. So how would being in a consortium help reduce that risk?
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, my background is really in technology development, and there's a lot of risk associated with technology, right? The main things that drive that are, do you know what you're doing? And do you have someone that can do whatever it needs to be done? And so those are the two things that really drive a lot of your risk, right? Can you do the work? And it's really, can you do the work for the cost constraints that you're put in? And do you have the people with the right experience or skill level in order to perform that? Consortiums are a great place to alleviate that. One, as I mentioned previously, throughout the consortium, you have this wide array of members with diversity of experiences, as well as diversity of capability. And because of that, the consortium can provide you mentors that ensure that you know what you need to do in order to do that work, that you have an idea of what the skill levels are and what the capabilities are that you need in order to do that. But also because they have that diversity of experience and capabilities, they also provide you opportunities for partners. And partners are another way in which you can reduce risk, because you share it with them as you take on these new responsibilities. as well as you could have partners that also provide you unique capabilities that may address some of that you would need in order to perform the work. It may not be economical for you to have because you don't really work in that area quite a bit. You don't have a lot of work in. Companies may have portfolio, or that may be their niche, and there's enough to do that. Whatever it is, the consortium gives you a place where you can access those skills as well as that experience and find and network to find other partners, all of which contribute to reducing risk.
I love that. I love the idea that mentorship and diversity of experience actually absorb risk. It's not just sharing opportunity, it's really about sharing protection. So, Kenyatta, let's go back to you and your background and expertise. For smaller firms or those who are just entering government contracting, the barriers can feel sky high. How does consortium membership help level that playing field?
That you would have me following me because I need to play off on there. So he explained that in a way that is more like the benefits, right? Risk management, reducing risk is a benefit of a consortium, right? So one of the things I would say is there's so many benefits to consortiums. And one of the primary benefits is that you can capitalize on demand. When something is hot, whether a hot focus area, whether it's cyber, whether it's AI, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's America, it doesn't matter. It's at that moment, but the demand is sky high and you're trying to figure out how to play in that space. As Victor mentioned, you're talking about being able to capitalize on partnership so you can seize the demand. And then when you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to seize the demand, I get to figure out the joint talent and how that joint talent for each entity will help the government meet the objectives that it has while capitalizing on each of our unique sets. We don't have to be the jack of all trades, master of none in a way anymore. We get to actually engage in what we love, where our passions are that bring us together and bring the work together in a beautiful masterpiece. As consortiums focus is to manage low barriers of entry. Non-traditional suppliers and contractors get to benefit more rapidly. And then we get to be a part of enhancing the cutting edge technology as a team, which drives up outcomes for the government customers. And in some cases where the venture is of high risk, working as a team in the consortium allows for each of us to manage our resources in a balanced fashion, reducing individual risk to drive positive outcomes. And then lastly, more than anything else, we get to actually include academia into this process, which most people don't often realize. And that allows us to help universities grow, and the students are growing as well, because the universities are benefiting at their research getting to be expanded, contributions made to their research, their students getting real world experience. And then each of us as companies get access to some of the best and brightest upcoming minds in very specific areas. So hopefully that answers your question, Rick.
No, it absolutely does. And then Ahmad, I want to let you chime in here as well, because again, I know you've got a lot of experience with this.
Sure. DD is critical for all businesses, but Kenyatta pointed out, they can be particularly helpful to small businesses and really help level the playing field. They allow them access to government stakeholders they normally may not have access to, and state requirements and opportunities. As mentioned, consortiums often are advancing critical priorities or solving big problems. So they're driving and influencing policy as well. So I like to think of a consortium as being in the room where it happens. You get to influence and drive policy, but also have the opportunity to hopefully shape requirements and opportunities. Another area where consortiums are just really helpful for small businesses is having the right complementary partners that can force multiply and enhance your core capabilities is critical in BD. And consortiums are just a great forum for that. And as mentioned earlier, they're also a great forum for filling gaps, whether it be a technical gap where you just don't really do the work or it's not economically feasible, it doesn't make sense for your company. So they're a great resource for building stronger teams and finding the right complementary partners too.
No, that's fantastic. And again, it's one of those things where we're trying to make sure that you understand what you get from building a consortium, right? It's kind of like getting that all access badge to the big leagues, but you don't have to mortgage your headquarters. You're not losing an arm and a leg and your firstborn, because I'm pretty sure you're attached to all of those. I know I am. Vic, I want to jump back to you for a second. Let's talk speed here, because in 2025, time isn't just money, it's momentum. Now, how do consortium projects, especially those that might use something like an OTA agreement, compared to traditional procurement timelines?
Well, recognize the fact that OTAs are the other transactional authority, which is really just a fancy name for a contractual vehicle within the government that allows that organization kind of tailor the federal acquisition regulations to adapt to whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish in their mission. And there's been an explosion of OTA type opportunities out there. And most of the consortiums that I've been familiar with have been structured under an OTA. And what that allows is some flexibility in how they're set up. And within the consortium itself, the consortium has the ability to set up opportunities for their membership. And what that allows us to do is really accelerate the kinds of things that we're doing. There's really focus, because the consortium is focused on some kind of technology area or some kind of problem they're trying to address. And so you can kind of narrow the focus of what you're trying to do. A lot of the consortiums produce their own opportunities, call them project calls or things like that. They're template based. So they tend to be very quick, very quick. They tend to be within as quick as 60 days where we're issuing actual contracts to actually perform work. They tend to be much smaller in scope than you would expect in some of the other government contracts. But that's what lends itself really to advancing technology and really exploring the ideas, the innovative ideas, and making them into something that will work. That is opposed to in a traditional sense, where you're looking at 6 months or longer in order to actually execute a contract. So these things are much quicker. You get much more rapid turnaround. And we've talked about lowering barriers. The fact that you can make the process a lot simpler also makes it faster, because you don't have as many resources tied up into responding to it. That's a lower barrier for you to participate. It also expands the number of participants who can benefit from being a part of that consortium. So it's not just the big companies that are going to benefit from that. These small startups never had any experience working with the government or government acquisition space. The low barrier to them participating and actually getting experience through the consortium system.
No, and that's fantastic, because we got to be honest with you. 6 months or longer waiting for an award, it almost feels like we're waiting for the next season of Stranger Things, which still is not here, by the way. We are still waiting, and some of us may actually remember that show. So, all right. What I want to do now is I kind of want to move from theory to reality. This is where the rubber meets the road, or since we're talking about Move America, where innovation meets the infrastructure. See what I did there? I was proud of that one myself. Kenyatta, I want to ask you, what is one unexpected benefit you've seen from a company being part of a consortium, something that surprised you?
I can think of quite a few, actually. I won't be long-winded. I'll just say it this way. The first thing that comes to mind is reduce financial risk in order to work with the government, and also how we reduce risk to the government. Something that is an unexpected benefit that it's very rare that both things happen simultaneously. But in a consortium management environment, you can reduce risk for each company that is participating as a partner. And then you also can reduce the cost or expenses on a particular program for the government so they get more bang for their buck. And this is done by blending expertise through the true partnership that a consortium offers. We lower performance risk of failure and increase cost benefit on a consistent basis. A second way that we often do that, in so many cases, consortium tends to provide access to larger, more stable projects. The consortium allows for businesses to pool resources and expertise in an economical way that drives performance. You talked about speed just a minute ago with Vic. This is a way that that actually happens. An example of that was I was the senior contracting official at Aberdeen Proving for a few years, and we were the nation through Operation Warp Speed, Perna and Dr. in that time for COVID. And we had to work with major entities, pharmaceutical companies, but we also had to do things like find needles because they were almost impossible to find. They weren't made in America. So we had to go through and find out companies that could actually help us stay to make needles in the country. Then you had to get different types and sizes of needles, and then you had to get them to every single COVID vaccination site in the country, right? And that actually, the ability to do that was driven by a national emergency, which opened rule book for us to be able to go more quickly, more rapidly. But under a consortium and OTA type environment that Vic mentioned earlier, then that allows us to kind of combine rules to gain success. I'm going to rephrase one thing that Vic said, because he said that an OTA allows us to paraphrasing Victor, by the way, allows us to kind of paraphrase FAR regulations in order to be more competitive and write better contracts. Sometimes it also allows you to write your own clauses and lay out for construction or for manufacturing or for professional services. You don't always have to use the FAR, which is a direct benefit of an OTA or a consortium that uses OTA type rules and infrastructure. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out and give that example that was very successful for us moving forward in the past.
No, and I love that. And again, having those organic partnerships with the networking and the learning opportunities and all of the other things, it just shows that these shared wins are often the absolute best outcomes. Now, we've talked about the best outcomes. Not every project is going to be smooth sailing. It's just not going to happen. I want to open this up to the panel for basically a brief response. So, Marco, we're going to start with you. What's a challenge that you faced working in a consortium, and how was it overcome?
I'm sure. So my experience, some of the challenges that I've seen while working in consortiums has been accountability and communication. What I mean by that is the accountability factor. Each member of the consortium understanding that they are independent contributor to the consortium and understanding that they are responsible for their independent contributions to the consortium, whether that's their financial contributions or equipment, and they also are independently responsible for their outcomes and deliverables, and making sure that that's effectively communicated to each member of the consortium through the government's process. So in my experience, just making sure that communication is a key factor in managing the consortium and making sure that every member of the consortium understand their independent roles and responsibilities and what their inputs and outputs are. So coming together, making sure that that communication is there and working collectively to accomplish the goal of the consortium.
Excellent. Vic, what about you? Can you chime in on this one?
Yeah, I think one of the things is not to forget your consortium membership as a part of your day-to-day business. A lot of companies, as they do their business development, as they look to opportunities, don't forget that you are a part of this consortium and that there are resources available to you that may assist you in things that you would normally say, hey, I got to go about this. You're going to tackle it on your own. That's what the consortium is about. It's about being a part of this community of practice. And that is a set of resources that are available to you in order for you to complete your business objectives.
Terrific. Ahmad, what about you? Why don't you chime in here and let us know a challenge that you faced when being in a consortium situation?
Sure, there are two examples that come to mind, and we're going to piggyback off Kenyatta a little bit. There were efforts related to COVID-19 and Ukraine security assistance. Kenyatta touched on a little bit, but with COVID, especially in the beginning, when I was chief of staff, and information was changing rapidly, which meant requirements were changing rapidly. And that was true for both PPE and for vaccines later on. I think we all remember when we thought cloth masks were okay, and same was true with vaccines. We ended up needing a lot of supplemental boosters to folks to really proceed. And unknowns were a big challenge. The other challenge in changing requirements, the other challenge was everything was needed yesterday. People were literally, these were rapid timelines. People were literally dying while we were trying to figure it out. So it was a throw the kitchen sink approach, which is ideal for consortiums, stay flexible, parallel track, and a real patchwork approach. And that's how we got through COVID with those type of approaches. Ukraine security assistance, very similar. There's a lot of unknowns when it came to what we really needed to get Ukraine. That was partly because there were unknowns with Russian air defense. No one predicted at the time that we would need legacy items like javelins or spears. Obviously changed over time. So unknowns were one piece, and like COVID, while we were figuring it out, people were being murdered. With a kitchen sink approach, patchwork approach, and that diverse range of suppliers that really got us through. Here are two examples of problems where consortiums were really helpful and uniquely situated to the challenges.
And last but not least, Kenyatta, you have anything to throw in here?
I'll just say this off by saying communication. I have a phrase that I often use in leadership courses when I teach them. Communication without comprehension is useless, right? It's one thing to communicate and tell people something, but it's another one to ensure that they understand what you meant, right? Example. We're sitting down, we're trying to iron out a requirement, lead the table as one contractor on a team, and believe we have an understanding of A, B, and C. The partners in that room left with thinking it was C, D, and F. I noticed that people were a little bit perplexed in how they were going to document the differences. So I went back and I said to the government, here is exactly what we think we heard. Please come back and tell us whether we are marching in the direction you would like or whether you want to make adjustments. Fine-tuning adjustments and not being afraid to ask for clarifications in the beginning will save everyone frustration and aggravation throughout a project. And that's not just in consortiums, that's all projects. Making sure that you actually comprehend what your customer desires and what each of your partners' roles will be will keep, and it will diffuse very tense situations very quickly. And it will allow you to make in-game adjustments very quickly if you have to, because a partner either falls off or needs bonus help. All right. So that's where I'll go from there.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And again, just to wrap all that up with a neat little bow, transparency, communication, a healthy ecosystem. It really is a recipe for a great partnership or potentially surviving marriage counseling. It's going to be one or the other. Finally, I want to talk about reputation, because reputation is something that a lot of companies don't think about. They don't understand reputational damage. They don't understand the cost of taking a hit to your reputation. But this is one of those instances where it's not that, it's more about building that reputation. So Kenyatta, I'm going to go back to you. How does being part of a consortium affect a company's credibility when it comes to government or industry partners?
I'm going to tell you, it starts with two main things. The consortium manager, the group who is managing the consortium as a whole, and then each company's technical expertise. Those two things work in tandem or in partnership. What I mean is this. When the consortium manager has a true vetting process that's based on expertise, experience, past performance and government requirements, meaning we understand the government requirements. We know what they say at a minimum you need in order to be successful working on these kinds of projects. And each company is vetted. That's going to automatically build trust with the government for each company, even if they had never heard of that company, because they know that the consortium manager has a solid vetting process. That also adds to the credibility of each contractor performing, because now it allows for them to say, we got here based on our expertise. We got here based on our ability to perform, and we're affordable. And so now we're increasing the success chances of each of the government's programs that we represent. And to me, that is more important, or even more important than most people understand, because the program offices have to have faith in your ability to perform at the cost you bid, or it all falls apart, because you won't be given the projects that are detrimental to them or important to them or valuable to them. And we are only in business to drive a program's success, driving their costs down and ensuring that they remain compliant without losing any efficiency. And if we can do those things, then we will always be successful, and we will always keep that collaborative environment that we've been talking so much about for here driving success.
No, and that's fantastic. And you got to remember that credibility boost is real. Being part of a respected consortium, it's kind of like putting, I know what I'm doing on your resume, but then having someone else back it up and say, yes, this person actually knows what they're doing. We really do want that. I'm going to go now to kind of crystal ball time. Okay. So let's talk about where this model is heading, right? Here's what I'm thinking. Kenyatta, we're going to start with you, but I'd like anybody else who wants to chime in to go ahead and chime in after this. Based on what you're seeing, how do you think the role of consortia will evolve in government contracting over the next few years? What are the trends that we're seeing?
Now this is a trick question, because I can't give you all my secret sauce, or my boss might come see me later. Right? So
Yeah, I got the same boss. I don't want that to happen. No.
But I'll give you, I will give you a little bit, because I think reading the tea leaves is critical, not just for MoveAmerica, but for every one of our potential partners that may want to participate in the consortium with us, right? The allies need to know some of this too. I would say understanding the evolution of any acquisition strategy evolved with a combination of legislation, learning how the tool can drive efficiency while ensuring auditability. We don't talk enough about how consortiums in the past, the myth was that they operated like the Wild Wild West. And it was because no one, what's the old saying from the Wizard of Oz? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. A lot of people did not want to go look behind the curtain because they were afraid of it, right? So we have to be all about driving customer reassurance and confidence when the government customer knows that your process is auditable, repeatable, successful, and yields a better working relationship. I have always not been the greatest fan of consortium. I just haven't when I was on the other side, but it was because most companies, when I asked them the hard question, didn't understand the importance of demonstrating the understanding of inherently governmental roles, which for most people, if you don't know, is in FAR 7.5, and the responsibilities while ensuring that every acquisition is still FAR compliant, if it's a FAR acquisition, and compliant with all applicable policies and rules if it's a non-FAR acquisition like OTAs or assistance, right? You don't want to lose speed to award or speed to completion while driving those points.
Fantastic. Anybody else have something to add on that one?
One of the things that ones actually recognize it is a tremendous push for collaboration and private entities. And consortiums just naturally lend themselves to that interaction. And because of that, I think you'll see an expansion of that. I mean, each theme, an expansion of the government's use and encouragement or sponsorship of consortiums to do exactly that, right? We tackle tough problems through collaboration between public and private partnerships that bring different experiences and capabilities together to address that problem. I see that in the near future.
I would agree with that, especially with the federal climate today, and particularly around acquisitions of research and innovation. The consortium model has been identified as an enabler for efficiency. And Vic said, since the government has seen how well it has worked in the private sector, in the academia sector, and in research and innovation, and because they're pushing for those two things, efficiency and collaboration, and since consortium lend themselves as in their nature to be those two things to be at the top of to be one of their main priorities, I think there's going to be a lot more expansion of it within the federal government within the years to come.
Terrific. Terrific. All right.
So we got some questions in the chat from the public if you would like to bounce a few of those.
We do. So I want to go ahead and grab one of those really quick. And again, to anybody who has a question that we may not get to, we'll make sure that we get an answer to you. Are there safeguards to ensure collaboration doesn't compromise IP, proprietary information, or competitive positioning?
I take to start with. The whole idea behind a lot of the consortium and the structure and how you interact with them are certainly geared around protecting IP for the participants, your rules, the restrictions about how you're going to use IP. Those things are already spelled out in any kind of engagement you're going to have. On top of that, the consortium itself can generate IP through some of the technology that they develop, and that is then owned by the consortium itself. And so it is very aware of IP that they can accumulate just as a group. So I think the short answer is that everyone is aware. Participants are coming together. They're using their innovation, that IP that they own, and they are setting up a kind of interactive set of rules that ensures that you protect the IP of those participants in that. And it tends to be very beneficial to the participants from the government perspective, that we understand that you're bringing this innovation in there to make something that solves a tough problem. And so the government is very not aggressive in looking to say, hey, I funded this activity and therefore I own some portion of your IP. That's really not the way consortiums are set up. They're set up to protect each of the things that those participants bring to solving that problem.
And to chime on to that, I've seen it done multiple ways. When I was the HCA, being senior official to sign off on the establishment of consortiums, one of the first things I added was, how do I protect the company's IP so they feel like they can trust that what we're doing will not rob them or harm them? The second thing was, how do I give the government access to potentially purchase the IP from a company who said, I really want to get out of this business one day. I don't want to manage this forever. I may be one to retire and go on an island somewhere or buy an island somewhere. I need to have the provision in the language when I'm establishing the consortium that allows to protect the company, but allow for the government to purchase it. And then the last part of it was important to the PNs. If the government started the investment, it wasn't something that the companies came in with, then we had to buy or establish what parts of the rights the government did own for those situations, because the government asked for something that the companies did not have or did not own, and we were going to be investing it from the beginning. And we tried to set up all of those scenarios with proper language so everyone knew what the playing field was.
Fantastic. And we're going to take just one more minute. Folks, we understand we promised you an hour. I told you it could possibly run over, but we did get one more question that I really like to ask. Does the government typically determine whether they'll want a consortium to solve an issue or not? The person who's asking is saying, his limited experience was that they had to propose to be part of a consortium versus creating one in an unsolicited manner to solve an issue.
No, it happens a combination of ways. Certain agencies have certain practices. The answer I'm going to give you is not one size fits all. It is driven by each agency or program office's fundamental needs and beliefs. There are some times where they're saying, for example, work for the Army. The Army said, Kenyatta, I need to bring all the smartest minds on electronics, warfare, and sensors. I need to bring them together, and I need to have a consortium ready to rock. And I saw one of the questions said, what's the difference between a think tank and the consortium? And the think tank typically goes into, I want to do strictly research and advocacy on very specific topics, whereas we get into the consortium and we're building upon those things that were in the think tank, potentially taking them into manufacturing or full-scale commercialization and productivity. And you sit back and you say to everybody, I want to be able to solve a variety of problems that may come up, and I need to have the most access to talent that I can in one spot or location at a very quick or short notice. Consortiums are perfect for that. So sometimes they have a series of projects ready to rock. Sometimes they just know, I know I'm going to have some problems and I need to get it ready to execute. And those are the PMs I really love, because they're thinking for tomorrow, not just for today. And then there are some that are thinking, we just saw one, and I won't go into too many details, but when I tell you they threw everything in the kitchen sink in that particular consortium request, they wanted the ability to build, create, repair, fix, R&D, everything in that particular consortium. So that magic answer to you is it depends on each agency or organization and what their needs are and what their organizational philosophies are.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks again. We really do appreciate you sharing all that insight. And again, I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to go ahead and start wrapping things up. Couple of big takeaways, I think, from the conversation. We've got consortium is something that will open doors to opportunities you just can't reach alone. So you're going to want to look for that. Risk, cost, expertise, all shared within a consortium, which makes bigger projects actually doable. And the right consortium can help build credibility. It's not just growth, it's about reputation as well. So here's where we want to remind you that if today got your wheels turning and you're looking for more information on this, MoveAmerica, here to help. You can see we've got the experts on hand. Whether you're just curious or whether you're ready to take the leap, go ahead and reach out to us. Communications@moveamerica.org will walk you through how consortium membership might fit your business goals. So again, want to say thank you to our amazing panel, Vic, Marco, Ahmad, Kenyatta. Big thanks to Meg again for keeping all the wheels turning, and a big thanks to all of you for spending time with us today. Seriously, I would buy everybody on this call a coffee, but my outreach budget doesn't allow for such extraneous items, of course. And I want to remind everybody, I'm totally saying that because my boss may be tuned in today. Anyway, again, thank you so much for all of your expertise that you shared. We appreciated you having the time today to take for all of us. And again, we really hope that people will reach out. Want to say, folks, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Use the link we send to sign up for our email blast. We've got all of that. All of this information is here for you. All of this expertise is available to you. We want to make sure that you take good advantage of it. Now, I'm going to say that does it for this latest webinar. We want you to tune in a couple of weeks. We're going to have our next episode. Our guest is going to tell us some great information about what happens after the MOA is signed and your first contract has been awarded, specifically what comes next with the PM. So be ready for that. Dun, dun, dun. We gave you a nice little spoiler. So you've got to tune in for that. It was a great tease. Until next time, I want to, again, thank everybody for their time today. Please stay curious, stay collaborative, and remember, teamwork doesn't just make the dream work, it makes the contract work. Thanks to everybody on the MoveAmerica side. Thanks to everybody who joined us today. We appreciate you. Take care, and we'll see you at the next MoveAmerica webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Rick.
Thank you. Bye-bye.